Hello friends, this is the Bread and Butter Fat Boy. It brings two new options to the Bread and Butter lineup, a wide body shape and Kevlar facing. And it's an excellent option for someone looking for a forgiving paddle with a big sweet spot and offensive options at the kitchen. Let's get into it. Before we nerd it up with all the specs and metrics, let me start with a disclosure. I'm going to start making disclosures on my videos for the sake of transparency. So I'll be doing it on all subsequent videos, and it's purely coincidental that I started on this video and has nothing to do with Bread and Butter in particular. Anyway, Bread and Butter sent me this paddle for a review. No money was exchanged, and Bread and Butter did not have any input on this video's production or get to preview it before it's published. I've never taken payment for this review or any others. But if you use my affiliate code, you get a discount and I get a commission, and that's how all this works. Okay, back to it. Kevlar face paddles have exploded in popularity this year, and wide body paddles are becoming more and more accepted. Surprisingly, wide body Kevlar paddles are still rare, with the only options currently being the Spartus Apollo, 11624 Monarch, and now the Fat Boy. If we expand that to standard shape paddles, there still aren't many Kevlar options. So right now that would be the Honolulu J3K, Grooven Laser, and Ethos Dunamis. And there are some wide body Kevlar options that are scheduled to be released soon, including one from Pickleball Apes. So the Fat Boy is a timely addition to the market, filling a gap in the rapidly expanding paddle space. Let's see how the numbers stack up. The Fat Boy costs $190, and you can take 15% off that with the code JOHNQ, bringing the price down to $162. This paddle is just wider than 8 inches, coming in at 8.1, and it's 15.9 inches long. The handle length is 5.3 inches, and the grip circumference is 4.25 inches. I'm also measuring a very slight flare going up to the top of the paddle, so it starts at 8.0 inches and it flares up to 8.1. It's a thermoformed paddle with a unibody design and edge foam. The surface sheet is a twill weave of Kevlar and carbon fiber. The texture is created with a peel ply, which leaves an epoxy embossing over the twill cloth. You can see here when zooming in with a microscope that it's a coarse peel ply pattern found on most other raw texture surfaces. Okay, let's dive into the performance metrics. The boxes up top give you the raw numbers, and the radar chart on the bottom shows where those numbers fall in terms of percentiles for over 200 paddles in my database. The left side of the chart is comprised of power, pop, and swing weight, which together give you an idea of the paddle's firepower. High values on the left side of the chart mean the paddle's a heavy hitter. Spin and twist weight are on the top right of the chart, and these relate to a paddle's control and forgiveness. And the bottom of the chart has swing weight and balance point, which together tell you about the maneuverability and hand speed of a paddle. So low numbers here indicate better hand speed. You can see right away that the radar chart for the Fat Boy flares out on the left and the right. So there's a lot of pop over on the left and a high twist weight on the right. There's also above average spin, which together with high twist weight gives the paddle really good control. And power falls below the mean in my database. I recently introduced a new metric called firepower, which combines power and pop and converts it to a scale of 0 to 100. The firepower score for the Fat Boy is 63, putting it in the above average category. And you can see from the radar chart that it's heavily skewed toward pop, meaning it gets more ball velocity with short strokes like counters and speed ups at the kitchen. And when we look at the bottom of the chart, we see very low values for swing weight and balance point, indicating exceptional hand speed. So this is a fingerprint of a control paddle with good hand speed and offensive options at the kitchen. Good hand speed and high pop for the Fat Boy give it perks at the kitchen during hand battles, but there's also a slight trade-off on the control side of things, moving this paddle a bit toward the all-court category, because high pop can also lead to more pop-ups. I'm also introducing another new control metric, The control score is still in beta form and will probably be tweaked as I adjust the formula. Like firepower, it goes from 0 to 100, with 0 having the worst control and 100 having the best. 3 variables are used in the calculation, so twist weight, spin, and pop. Twist weight correlates with the size of the sweet spot, so it's a rough approximation of the forgiveness of a paddle. Spin also contributes to control by allowing you to shape the ball and keep it in bounds or at your opponent's feet. Twist weight and spin are weighted equally in this formula and both go toward raising the control score, and then pop counts against the control score. Up to 20 points can be subtracted for pop because this metric naturally leads to more pop-ups and works against control. The control score for the Fat Boy is 73, which is above average. It would be higher if the paddle didn't have so much pop, but it's still a very controllable paddle, and the trade-off with the pop is more offensive options. Okay, so how do these metrics compare to other paddles on the market? The firepower and balance of power and pop on the Fat Boy are most similar to other popular paddles, such as the Rhombus Pulsar FX.R2, Honolulu J3K Pro, and Pickle Hurricane Pro 16mm. And the control score for the Fat Boy is most comparable to the Selkirk Lux Invicta, Gearbox G2 Quad, and the Vatic Pro V7. So the first thing I notice when hitting with the Fat Boy is the very large sweet spot and the solid feel of the paddle. Most lightweight paddles have more of a hollow feel, but the Fat Boy has plenty of plow through despite its low swing weight of 108. Hand speed is really good as expected with a low swing weight and low balance point. And the most surprising thing about this paddle is its really good pop. Speed ups and counters are especially effective with the Fat Boy, which is not what I expected with a wide body paddle. And there's plenty of control. Although high pop can be harder to control and can lead to pop-ups, the control perks of this paddle allow consistent drops, resets, and a soft game that comes easier than most hybrid or elongated paddles. The Kevlar face also has a more plush feel than carbon fiber equivalents, which personally helps me feel more confident with control and the finesse game. If this paddle has one weakness, it's hard drives and serves from the baseline. With power coming in at the 37th percentile, you're not going to blast anyone off the court, but with some whip through in your swing path, you can still put some heat on the ball, and it doesn't feel flimsy and ineffective like some other ultra lightweight paddles. Where this paddle excels is through the transition zone and at the kitchen with its good control and surprising pop. The Fat Boy feels more muted and controllable with softer shots like resets, drops, and dinks, and the pop provides ways to attack that not many other wide-body paddles have. I made very few modifications to the Fat Boy, so an overgrip is always a given for me, and I'm using a Bodhi grip on this one, which lately has been a contender for my favorite overgrip, together with the Yonex Super Grip, which I've used for years now. I also added a little perimeter weighting. As with many other wide-body paddles, it will still twist when you hit with it further off-center because there is so much real estate side to side. I shored this up by adding 3 grams of lead tape or tungsten just above the shoulders at the 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock positions. This raised the twist weight from 7.11 to 7.97, and the swing weight went from 108 to 112. It also gave me a slight boost in power. I didn't try using a weighted slice cap and the handle on this one because I like the balance point where it is and it's already very low, so I thought dropping it even further would throw me off. It's something I might experiment with later, but in general, I don't think adding weight to the handle of wide body paddles would be as beneficial as it is to more elongated ones. Bread and Butter has been on a roll since they released The Filth last year. I keep waiting for them to release something that's just kind of so-so, but it hasn't happened yet. The Fat Boy ticks 2 boxes which are firsts in the Bread and Butter lineup, a wide-body paddle with a Kevlar face. And this is still a rare combination for any company. There are currently only 2 other wide-body Kevlar options out there. And this isn't some Kevlar paddle that they slap their logo on to chase the latest Kevlar buzz. They've actually been developing the Fat Boy for longer than they have the Shogun. So despite the cheeky naming and branding that Bread and Butter is now famous for, they actually do the R&D and due diligence to ensure their products are some of the best on the market. So I'm happy to recommend the Fat Boy to anyone who's looking for a control paddle that leans all court with its surprising amount of pop. I've talked about this a few times already before, but I do believe that the majority of players out there would benefit from switching to a more forgiving wide-body paddle. Power is great when opportunities arise to put the ball away, but for the other 90% of the game, the margin for error is just too big for power paddles. At the amateur level, games are mostly won by the team who makes the fewest errors. And the Fat Boy has a built-in level of control that helps reduce errors from anywhere on the court. That's not to say that you can only play a control game with the Fat Boy. Its good pop also allows players to assert their will rather than just reacting and defending. In my book, this paddle strikes a good balance that would suit many players very well who are transitioning from an elongated or hybrid paddle to one that's more forgiving and less error-prone, but still with enough pop to be aggressive. For a wide-body shape, I think this paddle takes the cake for aesthetics. It has the right curves and proportions and avoids looking too much like a pizza peel, like many other wide-body paddles. The colorway is also great with blue and pink accents and the subtle midnight blues in the Kevlar twill weave. You can take $28 off the Fat Boy with the code JOHNQ, bringing it down to $162. This is on the upper range of wide-body and standard-shaped Kevlar paddles on the market, which average around $145 with discount codes. But I do think the price of the Fat Boy is well worth it for a quality, high-performing paddle that comes with the whole bread and butter experience. The last thing I want to mention is that the most comparable paddle to the Fat Boy is the 11624 Monarch Control, their new wide-body Kevlar option. These paddles are nearly the same shape, but the Fat Boy has a slightly shorter handle. I will say that the handle on the Fat Boy is still long enough for two-handed backhands. It's just not quite as comfortable to fit two hands on there as it is for longer handles. The extra handle length of the Monarch Control creates some different performance dynamics, such as more power and less pop than the Fat Boy. I'd say that the Fat Boy also has a slightly larger sweet spot, probably because the face on the Monarch is shorter to accommodate the longer handle. Anyway, these two paddles are both good options for players with different priorities, and I know people want to know how they compare, so there you go. And that's it. That's all I have to say about the Fat Boy, at least for now. But be sure to tune in to the podcast where Eddie and I will give updates as we get more experience with the Fat Boy. And if you already have one, let me know your experience with it in the comments. As always, thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next video.